In the quiet hours of the night, when the world grows still and the rhythm of your own breathing becomes the softest lullaby, you are invited to drift toward a distant place, far across cold seas, beyond the edge of familiar maps, into the mist-covered lands of the ancient North. These lands, shaped by time, wind, and wandering clouds, stretch outward beneath a pale sky, where daylight lingers softly and the nights whisper with memories of long-gone ages. As you settle deeper into rest, imagine a world with a crackle of hearth fire as the center of warmth, and the stories carried on the smoke rise gently toward timbered ceilings. This is the world of the Vikings, not in their battles or storms, but in the quiet corners of their lives, in the peaceful moments seldom spoken of, where history breathes slowly and softly. Picture yourself sitting by an old wooden hearth, the amber glow of flames reflected on polished iron, gently flickering across the worn grain of wooden walls. Outside, a thin veil of fog rolls between the distant pines, and the evening air carries the crisp scent of salt from a nearby fjord. The ground is cool beneath your feet, and the sky above is a vast dome of muted blues, with stars only beginning to reveal themselves, one by one. This atmosphere, both calm and ancient, invites you to listen, to follow the threads of stories woven long ago, in a world where silence and sound coexisted in their own natural balance. As the firelight softens and your thoughts loosen like untied knots, you may sense how the Norse world did not always burn with clashes of steel or echo with the roar of raids. Much of life in the northern lands unfolded quietly, shaped by the rhythm of the seasons and the slow, patient passing of time. Imagine gentle snowfalls settling over longhouses, muffling footsteps and softening the harshest edges of the landscape. Imagine villagers moving calmly through their routines, their conversations low and steady, their gestures shaped by a life closely connected to nature's pace. Even the sea, so often thought of as wild and unpredictable, has its still moments where its surface rests like smooth glass under the cold northern moon, reflecting the distant mountains in perfect silence. Allow yourself to wander deeper into this world, feeling the weight of modern noise lifting from your mind. There are no alarms, no urgency, no rush. Only the steady presence of ancient landscapes, sculpted long before any storyteller learned to carve legends into words. The cool air carries a sense of age, as though thousands of years drift through each breath. Somewhere far off, a lone seabird calls, its voice drawn out, slow and distant. The sound fades into the horizon, as though swallowed gently by the wind. Even closer, the soft shuffle of wool garments and the quiet clink of a wooden bowl placed on a table form the everyday soundtrack of the Viking homelands. Not dramatic, not fierce, simply human. Imagine walking along a shoreline where smooth stones lie scattered like old thoughts. Each stone has been shaped by centuries of tides, just as each story of the Norse people was shaped by generations of telling and retelling beside warm fires. You may feel the comfort of knowing that in these lands, stories were not merely entertainment. They were a bridge between the world as it was seen and the world as it was felt. Legends lingered in the wind that threaded through mountain passes. Myths rested beneath the moss-covered roots of ancient pines. Even history itself seemed to settle into the soil, waiting patiently for listeners willing to hear it with quiet attention. As you breathe slowly, let your mind ease into the texture of this world. See small villages nestled between towering cliffs and wide fields of frost-tipped grass. Smoke rises lazily from rooftops, curling upward into the pale sky before dissolving into the cold air. Children's laughter drifts softly between houses, muted by the thickness of winter coats and the closeness of community life. Somewhere nearby, the rhythm of a loom repeats steadily, as calming as a heartbeat. Every detail unfolds gently, inviting you to experience the Viking Age not as a tale of violence, but as a tapestry of calm daily moments. A wooden boat rests on the shore, its curved frame worn smooth by years of use. But tonight it is still. The oars rest inside, untouched. The sea does not call for a journey. Tonight belongs not to adventure, but to rest, to the quiet before sleep when the world feels soft and expanding and the mind opens like a slow-blossoming flower. Light from the horizon fades gradually, and twilight settles in with a comforting heaviness, as though the sky itself exhales. Inside the longhouse, warmth envelopes you like a woolen blanket. The fire glows faintly, casting sleepy patterns across the beams. Shadows stretch long and gentle, swaying with the movement of flames. A pot hangs over the embers, its contents simmering slowly. The scent is earthy and rich. People sit quietly, some mending clothing, others sharing murmured stories of ancestors, gods, and distant places touched by earlier generations. Their voices remain low, carrying the soothing cadence of those who understand that night is a companion, not a threat. Let yourself imagine the soft creak of wooden benches, the faint rustle of straw scattered on the floor, the gentle shift of someone settling in for rest. Someone hums a slow tune, a lullaby learned from elders who learned it from their own elders before them. The melody is simple, repetitive, and comforting. Outside, the wind brushes gently against the wooden walls, not as a howl but as a long, steady breath. In this moment, time seems to stretch. The hurried pace of the modern world feels distant. You are here in the timeless quiet of the northern night, surrounded by the echoes of a civilization that found beauty in simplicity, meaning in routine, and stories in everything it touched. This is not a place of urgency. It is a place of slow reflection, a place where even the myths unfold like drifting snowflakes, taking their time to settle. As you rest in this imagined Viking world, you may feel your awareness softening, like embers dimming into gentle glow. The night holds you. The earth beneath feels steady and old, carrying centuries of forgotten footsteps, forgotten whispers, forgotten dreams. And within this ancient calmness, you are invited to feel safe, quiet, and deeply at ease. The journey into Viking legends begins here, not with noise or conflict, but with silence, warmth, and the stillness that gently welcomes sleep.
Long before the legends were carved into memory, the northern lands themselves shaped the world of the Vikings. These lands stretched wide beneath an endless sky, where clouds drifted slowly, as if reluctant to leave. Mornings began with a soft gray light that crept gently across the horizon, touching the tops of snow-capped mountains and sliding down into deep, quiet valleys. The air was crisp, often carrying the faint scent of pine, salt, and cold stone. This environment, both beautiful and unforgiving, influenced every part of life, weaving itself into stories, rituals, and the rhythm of daily existence. The people who lived here learned to move with the land, listening to its signals, trusting its patterns, and accepting its silences. Imagine a coastline cut by steep cliffs and narrow fjords, where calm waters rested like sheets of glass on quiet days. The surface reflected the muted sky above, creating a mirrored world where sea and air nearly blended together. The fjords stretched far inland, winding through rocky terrain with a quiet elegance. Villages sat along their edges, small clusters of wooden homes that seemed to lean into the land for warmth. When the wind passed over the water, it did so softly, scattering tiny ripples that shimmered like silver threads beneath the fading light. These waters provided food, travel, and a sense of direction, yet they also held a certain stillness that became a natural part of the northern temperament. Farther inland, the landscape shifted into vast forests where tall pines and spruces grew close together. Their branches intertwined, blocking out the harshest winds and creating sheltered spaces where moss thrived in shades of deep green. The forest floor remained soft beneath layers of fallen needles, and when someone walked through, their footsteps barely disturbed the quiet. These woods were home to animals that moved with a similar softness: elk with slow strides, foxes slipping like shadows between trees, and birds whose calls echoed gently through the morning air. In winter, the snow lay thick across the forest, muffling all sound, transforming the world into a realm of muted whites and grays. In the warmer months, the landscape breathed differently. Meadows opened beneath the sun, covered in wildflowers that swayed lightly in the breeze. Streams trickled through the hillsides, their water cool and clear, tracing paths that had existed for centuries. The people of the north relied on these natural waterways for drinking, farming, and quiet moments of reflection. Sitting beside a stream, one might watch water glide effortlessly around smooth stones, as though time itself had slowed to match the gentle currents. These scenes became a familiar part of life, grounding the Vikings in the rhythms of their environment. The climate shifted dramatically from season to season. Winter lasted long, wrapping the land in its cold embrace. Nights were lengthy, stretching across hours of deep darkness lit only by the fires burning inside longhouses or the shimmering glow of the aurora above. The northern lights danced quietly, spreading curtains of green and pale blue across the sky, their movements slow and mesmerizing. They were neither loud nor forceful. Instead, they drifted, faded, and reappeared like thoughtful whispers from the heavens. People would watch them in silence, feeling a connection to something far larger than their own world. When spring arrived, it did so gradually. Snow melted in small patches at first, revealing the earth beneath. The sunlight lingered a bit longer each day, warming the soil and encouraging new plants to rise. Birds returned with soft voices, filling the mornings with gentle songs. Streams grew louder as melting ice fed them, yet even this sound felt soothing, like the murmur of distant conversation. The land awakened at its own pace, giving people time to prepare for planting, fishing, and the renewed cycle of work that accompanied warmer days. Summer brought brightness unlike anything seen during winter. The sun traveled high but slow, sometimes refusing to set completely in the far north. Nights glowed faintly, as if caught between sunset and sunrise. Fields turned golden with barley and rye, and the air filled with the sense of fresh grass, smoke from distant hearths, and salty breezes from the sea. The warmth was never harsh. It held a comfortable softness that allowed people to work long hours without feeling drained. Children played outside until late evening, their laughter carried gently across still air. Autumn arrived with cool winds that brushed across the skin like a quiet reminder of winter's return. Leaves shifted from green to shades of amber and deep red, falling slowly onto the earth below. Harvest took place during this season, filling storehouses with grains, salted fish, and preserved meats. People moved through their tasks steadily, knowing these preparations ensured comfort during the colder months. The land changed color each day, and those who walked through forests or meadows could sense the subtle transition from life to rest, from growth to stillness. Throughout all these seasonal changes, the landscape shaped not only how people lived but also how they thought. The vastness of the fields, the height of the mountains, and the depth of the fjords created a sense of humility. Every gust of wind, every shift in weather reminded the Vikings that nature held immense power. Yet within that power existed serenity, moments where everything felt balanced, predictable, and harmonious. The cold taught resilience, the forest taught resourcefulness, and the sea taught patience. These lessons were not spoken aloud but learned through quiet experience, passed from one generation to the next. The contrast between the harshness of winter and the gentleness of summer became a natural rhythm that shaped the Norse spirit. People found beauty even in the darkest nights, appreciating the glow of firelight reflected on frost, or the sound of snow falling softly against rooftops. In the same way, they cherished the brief warmth of summer, making the most of each bright day and calm evening. This connection to the land formed the foundation of their stories, beliefs, and traditions. The gods they worshipped and the myths they recited were deeply influenced by the world they walked through every day. In the stillness of these northern lands, one can imagine how the Viking worldview developed, rooted in the idea that life unfolds in cycles, that every challenge is balanced by a moment of peace, and that even the mightiest forces of nature can be gentle in their own time. As you visualize this geography and climate, allow yourself to feel the same quiet awe that ancient villagers felt as they looked out across snowy fields or watched fog drifting across calm waters. The land itself was a storyteller, shaping lives with subtle, patient hands. It continues now, softly guiding your imagination deeper into the world of the North, where history and nature meet in peaceful harmony. In the gentle light of early morning, before the sun has risen fully over the horizon, life in a Nordic village begins in a quiet, unhurried way. The air carries a faint chill, a reminder of the long northern seasons, and the ground feels firm beneath the worn leather shoes of those who step outside. Wooden homes rest in small clusters, their rooftops darkened by age, their walls built from sturdy timber shaped by careful hands. Smoke rises lazily from chimneys, drifting upward before dissolving into the cool air. It is a scene defined not by excitement, but by peaceful repetition, a rhythm of life shaped by the natural world and the steady needs of daily living. Inside the longhouses, the first sounds of the day are soft and familiar. Someone stirs the embers in the hearth, coaxing warmth from the fading coals. The faint crackle of fire fills the room, pushing away the last traces of night's cold. Shadows shift across the walls as flames grow brighter, illuminating furs stretched across wooden benches and simple tools resting where they were left the previous evening. People rise slowly, stretching their limbs beneath wool blankets woven from the fleeces of local sheep. Their movements are calm, purposeful, and without rush. A woman begins grinding barley with a stone quern, the rhythmic turning creating a steady, soothing sound. Each rotation is like a slow heartbeat, predictable and grounding. Nearby, a child helps by placing grains into the bowl, their small hands moving carefully, almost meditatively. The scent of warm porridge begins to fill the room, mixing with the earthy smell of burning wood. Someone steps outside to fetch fresh water from a nearby stream, returning with a wooden bucket dripping along the edges. This is how mornings unfold, tasks done quietly, shared among family members, embraced as part of a consistent and reliable pattern. Outside, the village slowly comes to life. A fisherman checks his nets, feeling the braided cords between his fingers. He moves with practiced ease, inspecting each knot, making sure everything is ready before he rows out into the still waters. The sea is calm at this hour, the surface reflecting the soft sky like an untouched mirror. Oars dip into the water with gentle splashes, sending tiny ripples outward that disappear long before reaching the rocky shore. The fisherman works alone, but solitude is not loneliness here, it is simply another shape of the day. In another part of the village, a farmer tends to animals waking from their night's rest. The goats bleat softly, nudging one another, their breath visible in the cool air. Chickens shuffle through straw, pecking at the ground with small, deliberate movements. The farmer moves among them with quiet familiarity, offering feed, checking fences, and pausing to watch the landscape stretch out before him. The work is steady and calming, a natural extension of the environment itself. Life in the village is deeply tied to these animals, not only for food and clothing, but for the gentle companionship they bring. As the sun rises higher, light spills across the village, illuminating the pathways worn smooth by countless footsteps. Women gather outside to weave, spinning wool into yarn and yarn into fabric. Their fingers move with a soft rhythm, guided by years of practice. The wooden looms creak lightly as threads tighten and release, forming patterns slowly, row by row. Their conversations are quiet, more like murmurs than full speech, blending seamlessly with the sounds of their work. These are not just tasks, they are rituals, simple acts repeated through generations, grounding each new day in familiarity and continuity. Children wander along the edges of the village, exploring with gentle curiosity. They collect smooth stones from the shoreline or branches fallen from nearby trees. Sometimes they help adults by gathering firewood, their laughter softened by the open air and the absorbing calm of the landscape. They learn by watching, observing the way their parents craft tools, prepare food, and maintain the household. Nothing is hurried. Knowledge is passed down slowly, as naturally as seasons shift from cold to warmth and back again. Midday brings a small pause to the routines. People gather for a simple meal, usually bread, dried fish, or stew prepared from whatever ingredients the season provides. The eating is communal, a shared moment of rest before returning to the day's responsibilities. After eating, some might repair tools, smoothing the edges of wooden handles or sharpening iron blades. Others tend to the roofs of their homes, patching any gaps with bundles of straw or tarred cloth. Every task, no matter how small, is approached with patient focus. The afternoon stretches gently, filled with the quiet hum of continued work. A blacksmith heats metal in a small forge, turning it with long tongs, the glowing orange surface breathing light into the dim shelter. Each strike of his hammer is controlled and steady, like a slow drumbeat resonating through the village. Sparks lift briefly into the air before fading into cool darkness. Even here, where fire meets iron, the energy is not chaotic but measured. The smith's movements follow patterns known to him alone, practiced enough to feel almost like a form of meditation. As the day leans toward evening, the village softens once again. Fishermen return with their catch, farmers guide animals back into sheltered spaces, and tools are stored neatly for tomorrow's use. The sky transitions into shades of pale gold and muted lavender, casting gentle light across rooftops and fields. People gather near the hearths of their own homes or in shared spaces, preparing dinner slowly and without hurry. The smell of roasted fish, herbs, and warm bread drifts through the village, mixing with the cool evening breeze. Night approaches gradually, giving everyone time to finish their tasks and settle into a quieter rhythm. Children climb onto benches covered with furs, drifting into sleep as older members of the household exchange soft stories, tales of long-lost ancestors, distant voyages, or mythical beings said to wander the northern forests. Their voices are low and steady, blending with the crackling of the fire and the soft rustle of movement within the longhouse. Daily life in these villages is not defined by dramatic moments or sudden changes. Instead, it is shaped by simple routines, shared responsibilities, and a deep connection to the world around them. Every day reflects a balance between work and rest, between community and solitude, between the land and the people who learn from it. As the final embers glow softly in the hearth and the village settles into quiet darkness, there is a sense of completeness, a feeling that life moves gently here, guided by steady hands and peaceful hearts, always in harmony with the ever-present rhythm of the northern world. Within each village, the longhouse stood as the quiet heart of daily life, a place where warmth gathered and stories lingered in the air long after they were spoken. Built from timber and insulated with thick layers of turf, these dwellings offered shelter from winter storms, autumn winds, and the deep chill of early spring. Their walls held the memory of countless seasons, absorbing the soft echoes of footsteps, laughter, whispered prayers, and the gentle rustle of wool garments. To step inside a longhouse was to step into a world of calm continuity, where time moved softly and every moment felt wrapped in a blanket of warmth. The entrance was low, encouraging those who passed through to bow their heads slightly, not as an act of submission, but as a quiet acknowledgement of the comfort waiting within. As the door creaked open, the first thing one noticed was the comforting scent of smoke drifting from the central hearth. The fire was almost always burning, tended carefully by someone in the household to ensure it never faded completely. Its glow painted gentle patterns across the beams overhead, turning the shadows into a kind of soft, shifting tapestry that accompanied the slow rhythm of the evening. The hearth was more than a source of heat. It was a gathering place, a calming presence, and the silent listener to every conversation shared around it. Inside, benches lined the walls, covered with woven wool blankets and soft furs from sheep, goats, or reindeer. These resting spaces served many purposes. They were seats during meals, beds during the night, and quiet corners of retreat during moments of personal thought. The longhouse did not demand rigid roles for its furnishings. Instead, each space adapted to the needs of the day, shifting fluidly as life unfolded. In one corner, wooden chests held family treasures, practical tools, or items saved for special occasions. Their worn surfaces reflected the gentle passing of hands over many years. Light filtered in sparingly through small openings designed to let smoke escape while keeping cold air out. These shafts of light moved slowly as the sun shifted across the sky, illuminating different parts of the interior in soft, muted tones. The combination of natural light and firelight created an atmosphere that felt timeless, neither too bright nor too dark, a place where the mind could settle into stillness with ease. Even during the longest winter nights, the longhouse's interior felt steady, enveloped in a warm glow that softened every harsh edge of the world outside. Food preparation was often done near the hearth. Pots hung over the flames, suspended by iron hooks or wooden frames, simmering quietly throughout the day. The gentle bubbling of broth or stew blended with the subtle crackling of burning logs, creating a soundscape that soothed listeners almost as deeply as any lullaby. Herbs dried along the beams above, releasing faint but comforting fragrances whenever the fire's heat rose upward. Bread baked on flat stones near the embers, its aroma filling the space with a sense of home and nourishment. Nothing about the process was rushed. Meals emerged slowly, shaped by patience and tradition. Gatherings in the longhouse were calm, woven from the threads of everyday life. Families sat together, speaking in gentle tones that respected the closeness of the space. Words carried differently here, softened by the furs on the walls, caught by the beams overhead, absorbed into the wooden floorboards. Even laughter had a quietness to it, not restrained, but softened by the coziness of the environment. Children played by stacking wooden blocks or drawing shapes in the ash near the hearth, their movements slow and unhurried. Elders offered stories when asked, their voices steady and low, their tales returning again and again to familiar legends. During storms, when winds whipped across the rooftops and rain pattered insistently against the walls, the longhouse felt even more like a sanctuary. Inside, the noise of the weather softened into a distant hum, like nature's own lullaby. People drew closer to the fire, wrapping themselves in wool blankets, sharing warm bowls of stew or cups of spiced drink. The storm became something to listen to rather than fear. It created a sense of togetherness, a reminder that life's wildness could be held at bay by sturdy walls and shared warmth. As evening deepened, the longhouse settled into a slower rhythm. Those returning from work, fishing, farming, weaving, or crafting, found the interior welcoming, a place where tired muscles relaxed and minds gradually loosened. Clothes were hung to dry near the warmth, tools placed carefully beside the walls for tomorrow's tasks. The shift from day to night happened seamlessly, with the fire's light growing softer and the atmosphere thickening with a sense of peace. Breaths became slower. Conversations drifted into silence. Sometimes, songs rose in the longhouse, simple melodies sung softly by those near the hearth. These songs were often old, passed down through generations, carrying echoes of ancestors who had once used the same melodies to comfort themselves through long winters. The notes lingered in the air, steady and slow, like the movement of a small boat on a calm sea. Listeners might close their eyes, letting the sound guide them gently into memory or imagination. On other nights, someone might carve wood while others watched in quiet appreciation. The gentle scraping of a knife against grain created a rhythm almost as soothing as the sound of grinding grain or weaving cloth. The artist's focus brought stillness to everyone nearby. The resulting shapes, spoons, bowls, simple figurines, became cherished pieces of daily life, made not just through skill, but through peaceful concentration. As night fully claimed the sky outside, the longhouse glowed like a warm ember against the darkness. People settled onto their benches, pulling furs around themselves. The fire was tended carefully, embers stirred so they would last until morning. Outside, the world fell into deep silence. Stars emerged, their faint light barely touching the ground, while the sound of the wind slipped softly across rooftops. Inside, sleep settled slowly, like snowfall across a quiet field. One by one, breathing grew deeper, bodies relaxed, and thoughts dissolved into dreams shaped by the day's gentle memories. The hearth dimmed to a soft glow, the last light flickering against beams that had seen countless nights just like this one. In this quiet space, surrounded by warmth, routine, and simple comforts, the longhouse became more than a structure. It was the heart of the village, a place where life unfolded not in bursts of action, but in steady, calming rhythms. A place where families grew, stories lived, and the peaceful heart of the Nordic world beat steadily beneath the wooden beams and glowing embers. Craftsmanship in the northern world unfolded with a quiet grace, shaped by patience, tradition, and a deep connection to the natural materials surrounding the people. Every tool, every object, every small piece of daily life carried a sense of purpose, created not in haste but in thoughtful, measured movements. Whether shaping iron in a small forge or smoothing wood with a knife, the act of crafting was as meaningful as the finished item itself. In the soft glow of a longhouse or beneath the muted daylight of a northern afternoon, artisans worked steadily, their hands guided by knowledge passed through generations. Imagine a simple workshop tucked beside a longhouse, its roof covered in turf, its entrance shaded by the branches of a nearby pine. Inside, the air holds a subtle blend of scents, smoke from the hearth, fresh-cut wood, warm iron, and the natural earthiness of the structure itself. The space feels humble, unadorned, and deeply comforting. Light filters in through small openings, landing on tools neatly arranged on wooden shelves. Each tool shows signs of use but not neglect. Where marks shine along the metal, and handles are smoothed by years of steady hands. A blacksmith begins his day by coaxing a small fire into life. He adds dry twigs, then larger pieces of wood, listening to the crackle as flames grow stronger. Once the wood burns hot enough, he places charcoal into the small forge. The air warms gradually, and the glow deepens into bright orange. When the iron is inserted, it changes color slowly, darkening, then glowing as it absorbs the heat. The smith watches closely, not rushing, waiting for the perfect moment. The ringing of his hammer on the anvil is gentle, rhythmic, almost melodic in its consistency. Each strike shapes the metal a little more, flattening, curving, or strengthening it depending on the task. Sparks drift upward like tiny fireflies before disappearing into the air. There is no urgency in his movements. The metal needs time. It must be heated, shaped, cooled, and reheated in a cycle that cannot be hurried. When the iron tool finally emerges, perhaps a spearhead, a knife, or a simple nail, it carries the quiet memory of every moment spent creating it. These objects were not made for display or pride. They were made to serve practical needs, to ensure the village continued to function smoothly through seasons of cold and warmth. Nearby, a woodworker carves with slow determination. He selects a block of oak or birch, feeling its weight and texture. Before cutting anything, he studies the grain, sensing where it will split naturally, where it will bend, and where it will resist. There is something deeply calming in his process, a steady scraping sound as his knife peels away thin curls of wood. The shavings fall softly onto the floor, collecting in small piles that smell fresh and clean. Piece by piece, a spoon begins to take shape, or perhaps a sturdy bowl, or a beam that will strengthen the roof of a longhouse. Woodworking requires an almost meditative patience. The craftsman must understand the living memory held within each piece of wood. He works slowly, smoothing edges, rounding corners, carving patterns if needed. In the quiet Nordic villages, such carved pieces held significance. They supported families during meals, carried water from streams, and stood beside hearths during long winters. Though simple, these objects became part of daily rituals, valued not for ornamentation but for their reliability and the care invested in their creation. In another corner of the village, weaving takes place in the soft, rhythmic patterns of hands guiding wool into thread. Women gather near their looms, drawing fibers through their fingers, twisting and pulling with gentle expertise. The loom creaks as wooden bars shift, and threads tighten and relax in a steady sequence. Wool, from sheep raised nearby, is first cleaned, combed, and spun into yarn. This spinning alone is a calming process, with the spindle whirling slowly, turning fluffy fibers into firm, even strands. Once the cloth begins to form, a pattern becomes visible. It is rarely complex, a series of straight lines or alternating shades of natural wool, but the simplicity itself holds beauty. The fabric will later become garments, blankets, cloaks, or coverings for benches. These woven creations are essential for survival in the cold climate, providing warmth during harsh nights. But beyond their usefulness, the garments also carry a sense of identity. They reflect the environment, the sheep that lived nearby, and the weaver's steady hand. Each piece tells a quiet story of time, care, and patience. Leatherworking brings another layer of craftsmanship to the village. A worker softens hides by soaking, scraping, stretching, and drying them carefully. The hides are transformed into shoes, belts, bags, bindings, and straps. The sound of scraping tools brushing along the hide is soft but steady, like a whisper repeating itself. The leatherworker bends over the material, shaping it with slow, deliberate motions. Each item created is durable, made to endure long journeys, harsh weather, or daily wear. And yet, even the simplest piece feels intentional, formed with respect for the animal that once carried it. Crafting was not simply a profession. It was a rhythm woven into the fabric of everyday life. Tools had to be repaired before the next season. Boats needed new planks. Clothing needed stitching. Implements used in farming, cooking, or fishing had to be maintained. These tasks were not interruptions but natural continuations of the cycles that defined village living. People worked together, sharing skills and learning from one another. In a place where survival depended on cooperation, craftsmanship became a quiet form of community where hands worked side by side and knowledge passed gently through generations. As evening fell and the daylight faded, many artisans continued their work by the light of the hearth. The glow of firelight made the polished metal shine, cast gentle shadows across wooden surfaces, and illuminated the rich textures of wool. The atmosphere of the longhouse became a kind of workshop, alive with the soft sounds of scraping, weaving, tapping, and sharpening. Conversations drifted through the air, low and soothing, blending with the steady rhythm of the work. In this world, craftsmanship was less about speed and more about presence. It celebrated the beauty of simple tasks, repeated with dedication and intention. It honored the materials provided by the land, the iron from the earth, the wood from the forests, the wool from the sheep, and the hides from the animals. Each item created held a quiet dignity, shaped by patient hands and a deep understanding of nature's gifts. As the day came to a close, the tools were placed carefully aside, the fire dimmed to embers, and the workshop fell silent. The objects crafted during the day remained behind, waiting to become part of the next day's routines, carrying with them a sense of calm, steadiness, and the peaceful heart of the northern world. In the quiet rhythm of Nordic life, society formed itself not through loud declarations or sharp divisions, but through a gentle, natural order that settled into place like falling snow. People understood their roles not as boundaries, but as threads woven into a larger tapestry, each one supporting the others, each one necessary for the strength of the whole. This structure allowed the village to move as a single living body through the turning seasons, responding to hardship and abundance alike with steadiness and cooperation. In these communities, leadership was not marked by grandeur. A jarl, often the guiding figure of a settlement, lived among the people, sharing the same spaces, the same weather, the same challenges. His authority came less from force and more from respect, earned slowly through wisdom, fairness, and the ability to mediate disputes without stirring unnecessary conflict. When he spoke, his voice was measured, shaped by years of listening carefully to others before offering judgment. Discussions around the hearth often included differing opinions, but they unfolded in calm tones, each participant aware that harmony mattered far more than winning an argument. Beneath the jarl were the carls, the free people who formed the heart of the community. Farmers, fishermen, artisans, warriors, and traders, all moved quietly through their daily responsibilities. They were the ones who sowed barley in the spring, guided boats across cold waters, and raised children with gentle instructions learned from their own parents. The freedom they held was not loud or ostentatious. It was a quiet kind of independence rooted in responsibility, a duty to their families, their land, and their neighbors. The sense of unity among the carls created a peaceful strength that helped every village endure long winters and uncertain harvests. Then there were thralls, individuals bound to service. Their lives were harder, shaped by labor and the expectations of those above them. Yet even here, in this lowest rank of society, the interactions carried a softness not often described in tales of the North. While inequality existed, it rarely carried cruelty within the smaller villages. Thralls lived alongside those they served, sharing meals, fires, and stories. Over time, many thralls earned their freedom, becoming part of the community they had supported. In these villages, even those with limited status found spaces of quiet companionship, their contributions valued as part of the steady rhythm of life. Laws and customs guided behavior with gentle clarity. These rules were passed down through storytelling rather than formal edicts, woven into sagas, shared at gatherings, and reinforced through memory. The people believed deeply in balance, understanding that peace was fragile and required constant nurturing. Disputes were settled through assemblies where voices were heard patiently. There were no towering halls or ceremonial courts, only outdoor gatherings beneath the open sky, with the sound of wind brushing through grass as a reminder of nature's impartial presence. Decisions were made slowly, with careful thought, so that fairness might settle over the village like a soft blanket. Honor played a quiet role in everyday life. It was not the fiery honor of warriors seeking glory, but a gentle one, rooted in trustworthiness, kindness, and keeping one's word. A person's reputation grew through consistent actions, sharing fish with a hungry neighbor, repairing a fence for someone unable to do so, or tending animals belonging to an elder who could no longer manage alone. These small acts strengthened bonds, creating a sense of collective security. When someone received help, they offered help in return, building a cycle of mutual reliance as natural as the turning of the seasons. Family provided the deepest foundation of this society. Generations often lived under one roof, their roles blending like colors in a fading sunset. Elders carried stories of the past, speaking slowly so every word took root. Parents taught their children with gentle hands, guiding them through daily tasks, showing them how to gather firewood, how to grind grain, how to mend a torn garment. Children learned not only through instruction, but through watching the steady movement of those around them. They absorbed the quiet patience that defined village life, growing into adults who carried the same calm energy. The presence of shared rituals further united the people. Simple ceremonies marked the passing of seasons, the arrival of harvest, and the beginning of winter. These gatherings were not extravagant, they were moments of connection, where families stood shoulder to shoulder in the flickering torchlight, listening to songs older than anyone present. The rituals created a sense of shared identity, an understanding that every individual was part of something larger, shaped by tradition, belief, and shared memory. Work, too, fostered community. Fields were plowed together, fish were dried in long rows of shared racks, and repairs to longhouses often involved multiple families lending tools and labor. The rhythm of collective work softened the burden for all. No one felt isolated, because the community moved like a single organism, breathing, working, resting, and enduring as one. Even difficult tasks became easier when performed alongside companions who understood the weight and purpose of the effort. Despite the structure of society, there was a profound sense of fluidity. A fisherman might help a woodworker, a weaver might support a farmer during planting season, a warrior might spend long periods tending sheep or goats. Life demanded versatility, and people met these needs with a calm acceptance. The boundaries between roles blurred, not out of confusion, but out of necessity, creating a world where cooperation overshadowed division. Evenings drew everyone together, their differences softened by the warm glow of the hearth. Stories filled the air, shared by people from every place in the social order. A thrall might recount a tale learned in childhood. A farmer might describe a dream. A visiting trader might share news of distant shores. In the dim light, distinctions between ranks faded, leaving only human voices rising and falling in a gentle murmur. The sense of unity created in these moments lingered long after the stories ended. In the stillness of night, when the last embers glowed softly and silence filled the longhouse, the structure of society seemed less like a hierarchy and more like the layers of a tree, each ring growing from the one before it, each level essential for the strength of the whole. Life in these northern villages thrived on balance, cooperation, and the quiet understanding that every person, no matter their rank, played a part in keeping the community warm, fed, and at peace. As the night deepens and the stars slowly reveal their patterns, another story begins to unfold in the quiet sky, one woven with royalty, pride, and the delicate balance between beauty and consequence. High above, poised in a graceful arc, rests the constellation that the ancient Greeks associated with a queen known for her elegance and vanity. Nearby, another group of stars completes the celestial portrait, forming the shape of her husband. Together, Cassiopeia and Cepheus gaze outward from the heavens, their tails forever etched into the fabric of the night. Imagine a kingdom by the sea, its shores washed gently by waves that shimmer under moonlight. The air is warm, carrying the scent of distant jasmine and the faint rustle of palm leaves stirred by evening breezes. This is the land of Ethiopia, not the modern nation, but the mythical kingdom of ancient Greek stories. Here, Cassiopeia ruled beside her husband, King Cepheus. She was renowned for her striking beauty, but even more for her undeniable pride. Her vanity was legendary, spoken about in hushed tones among the people who admired her but also feared what such arrogance might bring. One quiet evening, as the palace glowed with oil lamps and distant musicians played soft notes of lyre and flute, Cassiopeia made a boast that would ripple through the heavens. She claimed that she and her daughter, the lovely Andromeda, were more beautiful than the Nereids, sea nymphs cherished by Poseidon himself. To ordinary ears, such words might have passed without consequence. But to the gods, comparisons were delicate things, capable of stirring powerful emotions. And Poseidon, god of the sea, was not known for his tolerance of insults directed toward those under his protection. Picture the ocean responding to Cassiopeia's boast, waves rising higher, crashing more fiercely against the shore. Fishermen pull their nets hastily from the water and hurry toward land. The sky darkens swiftly as storm clouds gather. The kingdom feels a shift, a heavy tension settling like a stone across the land. This was no ordinary storm brewing. It carried the weight of divine displeasure. Poseidon, enraged by Cassiopeia's words, sent a monstrous creature from the depths of the sea to ravage the coastline. The beast, often imagined as a serpentine form with scales glistening like wet stone, struck fear into the hearts of all who saw it. Villages trembled beneath its approach, and its roar echoed across the cliffs like the growl of an angry storm. The people turned to their king, who turned in desperation to the oracle of Ammon, hoping for guidance. The oracle's answer was devastating. To appease the wrath of the gods, Cepheus and Cassiopeia were told they must sacrifice Andromeda, their own daughter, to the sea monster. Imagine the crushing sorrow that filled their hearts, the echoes of guilt and fear pressing upon them. Cassiopeia, whose pride had sparked the gods' anger, must have felt the weight of her words heavier than any crown she had ever worn. Andromeda was chained to a rock by the sea, her fate seemingly sealed. But myths often turn on moments of grace, and this story was no exception. Perseus, the hero returning from his battle with Medusa, happened upon the scene. With courage and divine gifts at his side, he faced the monstrous creature and defeated it, rescuing Andromeda and restoring hope to the kingdom. Cassiopeia and Cepheus celebrated their daughter's salvation, but their joy did not erase the consequences of past arrogance. The gods, ever mindful of balance, bestowed a final lesson upon the queen. When Cassiopeia was placed among the stars, her constellation was set upon a celestial throne, but the throne turns through the night sky, sometimes appearing upright, other times upside down. To the Greeks, this was symbolic. It reminded them that even beauty and royalty cannot escape the laws of humility. When the constellation dips below the horizon, Cassiopeia appears to be hanging upside down, a gentle yet persistent reminder of the dangers of vanity. Imagine looking up at the night sky now. The stars form a shape like a tilted letter W or M, depending on the time of year. This elegant curve is Cassiopeia, still seated upon her throne, her posture graceful even in inversion. Her stars are bright and easily found, making her one of the most recognizable constellations for stargazers. She seems to shimmer with a quiet dignity, her story softened by time but still present in the glow of her celestial form. Nearby, another constellation completes the royal scene. Cepheus, her husband, is represented by a shape that looks like a house with a pointed roof. Though less bright than Cassiopeia, his proximity to her in the sky reflects their partnership on earth. Cepheus, unlike Cassiopeia, is not remembered for pride or beauty. Instead, he is often portrayed as a ruler caught between loyalty to his people and love for his family. When he was placed among the stars, it was not to punish him but to honor his role in the story. His constellation stands quietly beside hers, watching over the night with steady calm. As you let your mind drift with the gentle rhythm of these constellations, imagine the sky as a vast tapestry where lessons and memories float above you. Cassiopeia's stars arc high overhead in northern latitudes, never dipping completely out of sight. Her movement through the night is slow, soothing, predictable. To ancient travelers and shepherds, her presence was a familiar comfort, a celestial queen who signaled direction and seasons simply by her position. Cassiopeia and Cepheus were not just figures in a story, they were markers of celestial navigation. People learned to locate north by tracing the line from Cassiopeia's stars toward the North Star. In winter, she hangs proudly above the horizon, her shape crisp and clear. In summer, she reclines lower, her throne tilting as though she rests more deeply in the warmth of the season. Her changing orientation became both a guide and a metaphor, gently reminding all who looked upward of the cycles of pride, consequence, and restoration. Now imagine yourself lying beneath that same sky. The stars glow softly, their light traveling unimaginable distances to reach you. Cassiopeia leans across the heavens, her luminous throne gliding slowly from one position to the next. Cepheus hovers close by, steady and unobtrusive. Together, they create a quiet tableau of cosmic royalty, a reminder of stories told long ago, of lessons whispered through generations, and of the subtle beauty that fills the night when the world is ready to listen. As your breathing slows, the constellations seem to move with your breath, rising gently as you inhale, settling peacefully as you exhale. Their presence is comforting, timeless, familiar. They invite you to rest, to let go, to drift gently into the same calm that ancient storytellers once found beneath their glow. And in the quiet of this moment, you share in the vastness of their story, one written across the sky in soft points of starlight. Long before the first longhouse stood beneath the northern sky, before the first seed was planted or the first boat set out across the fjords, there was only silence. It was not the kind of silence that follows a quiet night, nor the gentle quiet of snowfall over fields. It was deeper, older, a stillness so complete that even the idea of time had not yet taken shape. This vast emptiness, stretching endlessly in every direction, was known as Ginnungagap, an ancient void resting between two primal realms. To imagine it is to imagine the soft pause between breaths, the shape of dusk before the stars appear, or the calmest moment before sleep overtakes the mind. On one side of this great void lay Niflheim, a realm of mist, frost, and deep cold. It was a place where ice layered itself over ancient stone, forming landscapes that gleamed faintly beneath pale, unmoving light. Rivers of freezing water flowed slowly there, their surfaces half-frozen, their currents barely stirring. Everything in Niflheim existed in a quiet, unchanging stillness, as though the realm breathed icy air yet never truly moved. From its depths came a cold so profound that it felt more like a presence than a temperature, an ancient breath drifting outward. To the opposite side lay Muspelheim, a place of fire, light, and gentle radiance. Its flames did not roar or claw upward as one might expect. Instead, they shimmered gracefully, casting waves of warmth through the darkness. The fire flickered softly, like thousands of distant lanterns floating in the void. Sparks drifted upward slowly, glowing as they ascended, fading as they cooled. Muspelheim's heat was alive and bright, but it was not violent, it was steady and calm, a warm counterpoint to Niflheim's deep frost. Between these two realms, Ginnungagap waited, a silent stretch of nothingness, neither warm nor cold, neither light nor dark. 4 ages that cannot be counted, this was the entirety of existence. Cold on one side, warmth on the other, and a vast stillness in between. Yet even in this quiet, subtle changes began to stir. The warmth of Muspelheim met the drifting ice of Niflheim, and where the two touched, something remarkable happened. The cold began to melt, but only slightly, forming droplets that hovered gently in the air of the void. Each droplet reflected the faint glow of distant flame. Slowly, these warm droplets met again with frost, and from this delicate meeting of opposites came the first movement, the first soft stirring of life. A great figure formed within the melting frost, taking shape gradually, as though sculpted by invisible hands. This was Ymir, the primordial giant, said to be the ancestor of all giants. He emerged from the ice with slow breaths, his presence vast yet peaceful. There was nothing threatening in his awakening, he simply existed, resting within the quiet of Ginnungagap, warmed by the gentle radiance that reached him from Muspelheim. Not long after Ymir's awakening, the droplets of melting ice formed another being, a great cow named Audhumla. Her coat glowed softly with warmth, and her presence brought a sense of nourishment into the void. From her flowed rivers of milk, sustaining Ymir in the endless quiet. She moved with slow, deliberate steps across the frost, her hooves making no sound. As she grazed, She licked the salty ice that surrounded her, uncovering something hidden deep within. Day by day, she licked at the ice and gradually, a form took shape beneath it. First, hair appeared, then a calm, steady face. Then a full figure emerged, a man, tall and strong, with features shaped as though by intention rather than chance. This being was Buri, the first of the gods. He stepped forward from the melting ice with an air of quiet dignity, as though awakening into a world he already understood. From Buri came Bor, and from Bor came 3 sons who would shape the future of all realms: Odin, Vili, and Vi. These brothers grew quickly in the stillness of Ginnungagap, observing the world with thoughtful eyes. They saw Ymir, immense and heavy in his slumber, a being shaped from the meeting of fire and frost. They saw Audhumla moving with gentle purpose. They saw the void itself, silent, empty, waiting. And from within their hearts rose an idea as soft as a whisper, the desire to bring order to this endless quiet, to shape a world where life could grow. The decision they made was momentous, yet it unfolded with calm inevitability. From Ymir's great form, they shaped the earth. His flesh became soil, soft underfoot. His bones formed mountains that rose slowly toward the sky. His blood became the seas and lakes, spreading gently across the land. His hair became grass, covering the world in muted greens and golds. His skull was lifted high and transformed into the sky itself, vast and curved, stretching over the new landscape like a protective dome. They placed sparks from Muspelheim into the arch of the sky, where they became stars, small, steady lights that glimmered in the darkness. Some burned brighter, becoming the sun and moon, their movements gentle and predictable. Others dotted the night with subtle radiance, enough to guide travelers and lull those resting beneath their glow. The gods shaped clouds from leftover mist, letting them drift slowly across the sky, changing shape at their own unhurried pace. At the center of this new world, they placed Yggdrasil, a great ash tree whose branches extended far into the heavens and whose roots reached deep into places unseen. It grew quickly, yet its growth felt natural, like something always meant to be. Its leaves rustled softly even where no wind seemed to exist, and its branches offered shelter to creatures that had not yet been imagined. This tree would connect all realms, linking sky, earth, and hidden depths through its living network of branches and roots. From this act of creation came 9 realms, each with its own quiet identity. Some were homes for gods, others for giants or spirits or humans. Each realm unfolded gently, shaped with balance and purpose, designed not to clash but to coexist. Midgard, the realm of humans, lay at the center, protected by a great barrier, shaped carefully to offer both beauty and challenge. It was a place of forests that whispered with ancient knowledge, seas that shimmered under pale sunlight, and mountains that stood like guardians of time. Even after the world was shaped, the presence of Ginnungagap lingered in its quiet spaces. In the stillness of early morning, when mist rises from the surface of streams, one can feel a hint of that ancient void, a reminder of the calm before creation began. When snow falls softly and blankets the earth in white silence, it echoes the stillness that once stretched between fire and frost. And when the northern lights ripple across the sky, they carry the gentle glow of Muspelheim meeting the cool breath of Niflheim. The people of the north carried these stories with them, passing them down through generations. They told them not with urgency or fear, but with a gentle, steady reverence. The tale of creation was a reminder that even vast emptiness can hold potential, that warmth and cold can meet to form life, and that from quiet beginnings, entire worlds can grow. Each retelling brought listeners closer to the dawn of existence, inviting them to rest in the calm that came before everything, and to dream of the soft, cosmic rhythms that still flow through the world. Across the branches of Yggdrasil, the great world tree, the 9 realms stretched like quiet worlds suspended in a gentle balance. Each realm held its own atmosphere, its own soft rhythms, and its own quiet mysteries. To imagine them is to imagine a vast tapestry woven from starlight, drifting frost, warm earth, and ancient whispers, each realm connected yet distinct, each resting in its own slow heartbeat beneath the endless sky. Traveling through them in thought requires no movement, only the willingness to drift, to breathe, and to let the mind wander gently from one place to another. Midgard, the realm of humans, lay at the center of this great tree, nestled like a calm island in a wide cosmic sea. It was surrounded by protective boundaries, shaped by the gods to shield it from the deeper forces of the universe. Its forests, rivers, and open fields echoed with familiar sounds, birds calling at dawn, winds brushing across grass, waves breaking softly along distant shores. Life here moved at a pace shaped by the turning seasons, and people grew to understand the world through experience, patience, and connection to the land. Even in its simplicity, Midgard held a quiet beauty, its serenity enhanced by the unseen threads binding it to all other realms. High above Midgard rested Asgard, home of the Aesir gods. It was said to be a realm of clear skies, shimmering light, and long halls that stretched across golden fields. But contrary to the grand images often depicted in later tales, the Asgard imagined by villagers was not a place of thunderous grandeur. It was a realm of calm strength. The halls of the gods glowed with warm firelight, their roofs supported by beams that echoed the craftsmanship of human longhouses. The gods walked among gardens filled with quiet springs and slowly blooming flowers. The realm felt peaceful, a place where powerful beings gathered not only to discuss matters of fate, but to share quiet meals, thoughtful conversations, and moments of reflection beneath starlit skies. Vanaheim, the home of the Vanir, lay nearby, radiating warmth and gentle fertility. Its landscapes glowed softly with greens and golds, fields swaying in peaceful winds. Fruit trees, rivers, and wide meadows shaped a realm that felt like an endless summer afternoon. The Vanir were beings tied closely to nature and harmony, and their realm reflected these traits in every corner. Nothing rushed here. Plants grew at an unhurried pace, birds sang in slow, soothing patterns, and the air itself seemed to hum with a quiet energy. Many believed that the wisdom of seasons, the slow transition of buds into blossoms, and blossoms into harvest, was learned from this realm. To one side lay Alfheim, domain of the light elves. It was a realm suffused with radiant, gentle brightness, not harsh or blinding, but soft and dreamlike, as though every surface carried its own glow. The elves who lived there were thought to be graceful and kind, moving with a lightness that made them seem almost part of the air itself. Their homes blended into their surroundings, nestled among trees whose leaves shimmered faintly at dawn. Alfheim felt like a place where time slowed, where even the smallest movements created ripples of beauty. Listeners imagined it as a realm filled with quiet laughter, light footsteps, and melodies drifting between branches in the gentlest of tones. Darker, but no less fascinating, was Svartalfheim, or Nidavellir, the realm of the dwarves. Hidden beneath mountains and deep within the earth, it was a world shaped by dim light, glowing forge fires, and the quiet echoes of hammers striking metal. The dwarves, skilled beyond measure, crafted tools and treasures with unmatched precision. Yet their realm did not feel harsh. The underground corridors and caverns carried a sense of enclosed warmth, like stepping into a sheltered den during a storm. Fires flickered gently against stone walls, casting steady amber light. Pools of quiet water collected in deep chambers, reflecting the glow of forge embers. For those who imagined it, Svartalfheim felt like a place of deep concentration, where the silence between hammer strikes held a meditative stillness. Venturing farther outward, one encountered Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. Despite what dramatic stories suggested, people often pictured it not as a land of constant chaos, but as a place of vast, quiet wilderness. Mountains towered over wide plains, their peaks lost in drifting clouds. Rivers cut through deep valleys, flowing with steady, powerful currents. The giants who lived there were immense beings, but they, too, were shaped by the calm of their environment. They moved slowly, spoke thoughtfully, and lived in harmony with the rugged landscapes that surrounded them. Jotunheim was a realm of raw nature, untamed, expansive, and serene in its scale. Near the roots of Yggdrasil rested Niflheim, the realm of cold and mist. Frost lay across every surface, and icy rivers wound through the land in slow, deliberate paths. The air here was quiet, heavy with stillness, as though sound itself moved reluctantly. Mist curled upward from frozen lakes, drifting like pale spirits through barren trees. Yet even this realm held beauty, a beauty found in silence, in the crystalline sparkle of frost beneath a distant light, in the steady patterns of ice forming and reforming over time. Niflheim represented the peaceful breath of winter, the slow rest that came before renewal. Opposite Niflheim lay Muspelheim, realm of warmth and soft flame. Though fire shaped it, the flames were not violent. Instead, they glowed like embers in a hearth, casting golden light across landscapes of dark stone. Lava flowed not in bursts, but in smooth, steady currents, illuminating cavern walls with gentle radiance. Muspelheim embodied the quiet side of fire, the warmth that comforts, the glow that guides, the spark that fuels creation. To think of Muspelheim was to think of dusk settling across a horizon tinged with soft gold. Finally, there was Helheim, the realm of the dead. Many feared it in stories, but villagers imagined it differently, as a place of deep calm where souls rested after long lives. It was not a realm of punishment, but of quiet reflection. Its fields stretched into gray mist, its rivers flowed slowly, and its trees stood tall and unmoving. The air felt cool but not harsh, carrying the soft weight of memory. Those who entered Helheim did so not in fear, but in acceptance, joining ancestors in a space beyond time, where the sharp edges of life softened into gentle peace. Together, these 9 realms formed a universe balance between light and shadow, warmth and cold, life and rest. They were connected by the branches and roots of Yggdrasil, the great tree that held all existence in its steady embrace. Though each realm differed in shape and spirit, all were essential, interwoven like threads in a vast tapestry. To imagine them was to imagine the quiet beauty of the cosmos itself, unfolding slowly and endlessly, inviting wanderers not to conquer, but to observe, breathe, and drift peacefully from one world to the next.
Before the Vikings ever set foot on distant shores, their lives were shaped by the quiet presence of the sea. It surrounded their homelands not as a barrier, but as a companion, always there, always shifting softly beneath the sky. For those living along the northern coasts and fjords, the ocean's rhythm became intertwined with their own. Its gentle tides, its hushed waves brushing against smooth stones, its low murmurs carried to the night air. These sounds formed the backdrop of daily life. And from this long familiarity grew one of the most meaningful aspects of their culture, the art of seafaring. Boat building began not with tools, but with a simple walk along the shoreline. The builders observed how driftwood curved, how waves shaped fallen branches, how certain trees bent naturally under the weight of snow and wind. From these quiet observations, they learned which woods would hold strong and harsh waters, and which would bend gracefully without breaking. Oak was valued for its sturdiness, ash for its flexibility, and pine for its lightness. Each tree was approached with respect, its grain studied with practiced eyes, its future purpose envisioned long before the first cut was made. The workshop where boats took shape was rarely loud or bustling. Instead, it hummed with gentle activity. A few builders worked together, each one focused yet relaxed, moving with a calm rhythm that defined much of northern craftsmanship. Axes tapped against wood in slow, deliberate strokes. Knives scraped softly, smoothing rough edges. Ropes made from twisted fibers were pulled taut, their coarse texture whispering against callous hands. The hull of a boat grew gradually, its shape emerging like a crescent moon rising over still water. Building a boat was not simply a task. It was a meditative process. Each plank was fitted with care, each seam sealed with tar warmed over a small fire. The boat builders often paused to run their hands along the wood, feeling for imperfections invisible to the eye. They listened to the sounds the wood made when struck lightly, the resonant thrum revealing whether it was ready to hold the weight of the sea. By the time a ship was complete, it carried not just physical strength, but the patient energy of every hour spent shaping it. Once finished, the vessel rested on the shore, waiting for its first meeting with the water. Villagers gathered not for ceremony, but to share the quiet joy of seeing something so carefully crafted glide into its natural home. The boat touched the surface gently, rocking slightly as if greeting an old friend. The sea accepted it with calm waves, lifting it slowly, inviting it to travel across its wide expanse. When fishermen or travelers stepped into their boats, They did so without hurry. They placed their hands on the edges, feeling the smooth wood warmed by sunlight. Oars dipped into the water with soft splashes, breaking the surface just enough to set the boat in motion. Each stroke was steady and unforced, the movement of the oars echoing in the quiet air. Ripples spread outward in widening circles, gently disturbing the water before fading back into stillness. The open sea held many moods, yet those who sailed its surface knew the calm ones best. There were days when the water rested so peacefully that the sky and sea seemed to blend together, forming a continuous, pale horizon. The boat glided almost without resistance, sliding across the shimmering surface like a leaf drifting down a slow river. The air carried the faint scent of salt in distant shores, and the only sound was the soft creaking of the vessel's frame as it welcomed each passing wave. Navigation across these quiet waters was an art of subtle observation. Sailors learned to read the sky, the position of the sun during the day, the arrangement of stars at night. They watched the flight of birds, knowing that certain species travel far from land only at particular times. They studied the color of the water, the direction of winds brushing their skin, and the behavior of ocean swells that rose and fell with the steady breath of the sea. No maps were needed in these moments. The world itself provided guidance, speaking through signs subtle enough to be missed by those who rushed, but clear to those who moved at a patient pace. Nighttime sea journeys carried a different kind of calm. The sky above unfolded with countless stars, their reflections shimmering in the dark water below. The gentle glow of the Milky Way cast faint patterns across the ripples, turning the ocean into a quiet mirror of the heavens. The boat drifted through the starlit corridor, its movement guided by soft winds and the steady hands of those aboard. Lanterns hung from the ship's beams, their warm light pooling on the deck, dimming the edges of the world into a peaceful blur. Occasionally, distant sounds echoed across the water, a whale exhaling in the deep night, the cry of a seabird riding the currents, or the soft splash of fish breaking the surface. These sounds did not disturb the travelers. Instead, they blended with the natural music of the sea, creating a quiet symphony that eased the mind and released the tight hold of the waking world. Even the gentle rocking of the boat lulled sailors into a meditative state, the movement so steady and rhythmic that it aligned with the rhythm of their breathing. For longer voyages, when the ship sailed toward Iceland, Greenland, or the still mythical lands beyond, the sea became a companion rather than a challenge. The sailors spent long hours observing its subtle changes, adjusting their course with a patience born from generations of experience. Storms existed, but the stories told in quiet longhouses focused less on danger and more on the shared respect between humans and the sea. Even when waves rose tall and the wind howled across the vessel's bow, sailors held a deep trust that the same sea that frightened them could also cradle them gently when the storm passed. The sails of Viking ships, woven from wool and treated with oil, caught the wind in wide, deliberate curves. When the wind was strong, the boat surged forward with renewed energy. When the air grew still, the sails hung quietly, waiting for the world to breathe again. The combination of oars and sails allowed each journey to shift according to nature's rhythm, not the desires of the travelers. This harmony, the balance between human intention and the world's gentle insistence, was at the heart of every voyage. As ships returned to their villages, the quiet of the sea followed them ashore. The wooden hulls scraped softly against the pebbled beaches, signaling the end of another journey. Families greeted the sailors not with loud celebration, but with warm embraces, shared meals, and stories told in calm voices by firelight. The boats were pulled onto shore to rest, their frames creaking softly, the scent of salt still clinging to their planks. In every aspect, seafaring among the Vikings was not simply about exploration or travel. It was about moving with the natural world, listening to the wind, watching the water, trusting the stars, and accepting the sea's quiet companionship. It was a slow unfolding of experience, shaped by patience, observation, and the timeless rhythm of waves brushing against the sides of a wooden hull. And even now, when imagining a Viking boat drifting across still waters beneath a pale northern sky, one can feel the same quiet calm that once guided countless sailors through their peaceful journeys across the great northern seas. The Viking world extended far beyond the familiar lines of the coastline, beyond the quiet farms and clustered longhouses. For those with patient eyes and steady hands, the sea did not mark the end of their world, It marked the beginning of new horizons. Exploration unfolded not as a rush toward conquest, but as a gentle curiosity, a quiet desire to see what lay beyond the rolling fog, beyond the curved edge of the sky reflected in the water. These journeys were shaped by calm preparation, long stretches of silent sailing, and the slow discovery of lands that felt both foreign and strangely reflective of home. Iceland was one of the first great destinations that emerged from this quiet exploration. To the Vikings who stepped onto its shores, the land felt raw and unshaped, yet deeply peaceful. The air was crisp, carrying scents of distant volcanic earth and sea spray drifting from the waves. The landscape rose in broad stretches of green, interrupted by black lava fields that resembled frozen rivers of stone. Waterfalls cascaded softly from cliffs, and hot springs sent steam curling into the cold air like warm breaths rising from the earth itself. Settlers found quiet valleys tucked between mountains, places where the wind whispered across grass, and sheep grazed peacefully under pale skies. Life in Iceland formed slowly. Villages grew near calm bays and sheltered coves, where boats could rest after long journeys. People tended small flocks and explored the land with careful, measured steps. They learned the rhythms of weather sweeping across the island, gentle rains that settled into the soil, long days of summer light that never fully faded, and winter nights illuminated by the shimmering glow of the northern lights. Iceland felt like a land caught between worlds, where fire lived beneath ice, and ancient stories threaded themselves into cracks of stone and the mist rising from warm pools. To the west, Greenland waited with a different kind of quiet. Its shores appeared first as a faint line on the horizon, a soft outline of cliffs shaped by time and the weight of glacial cold. When Viking settlers arrived, they found a land that demanded patience and deep respect. The coastline offered inlets where boats could anchor safely, and expanses of green pastures blanketing the ground near the water. But just beyond these gentle spaces, massive ice sheets spread outward, glowing faintly in the sun like silent mountains carved from frozen light. The settlers built small communities along the coast, where the earth remained free of ice and grasses swayed gently in the wind. They raised cattle and sheep, fished in calm waters, and hunted seals along the shorelines. The air carried a stillness unlike anything they had known before, a quiet so vast that even the smallest sound, like the crack of ice shifting in the distance, echoed like a message from the land itself. In Greenland, life moved at a slower pace. Seasons stretched long and cold, and the light of the low sun cast elongated shadows that drifted across the earth like wandering spirits. Yet there was beauty in this starkness, a beauty rooted in endurance and the soft, steady connection to the natural world. Farther west still, beyond the familiar winds and waters, lay a land that Vikings would one day call Vinland. Its discovery began as a soft rumor, a whisper carried by sailors who noticed drifting wood unlike anything seen before, or who spotted flocks of birds flying in a direction that suggested land lay just beyond the edge of their vision. When Leif Erikson finally set out to explore these hints, he traveled with the steady confidence born from generations of seafaring. His journey unfolded quietly across the ocean, the stars guiding him at night, the gentle push of the wind filling his sails by day. When his ship at last approached the shores of Vinland, the land revealed itself in soft colors, forests stretching outward, beaches curved like open arms, and rivers gliding peacefully through the landscape. The air smelled different, richer, warmer, carrying scents of unfamiliar plants and distant flowers. The grass grew high and soft beneath the explorers' feet, and the woodlands were filled with gentle rustling, as small animals moved unseen among the leaves. The days felt mild, the nights calm, and the forest held a quiet abundance that seemed to welcome them. The name Vinland, meaning wine land, came from the wild grapes the explorers found growing among the trees. But more than the grapes, it was the feeling of the place that lingered in their thoughts, the impression of a peaceful, untouched world waiting to be understood. Temporary shelters were built along the shore, their walls warmed by sunlight, their roofs shaded by overhanging branches. People gathered berries, explored streams, and marveled at the birds whose songs sounded different from those back home. For a time, the explorers lived in a gentle harmony with this new land, observing its rhythms with respect and curiosity. Though the visits to Vinland were brief compared to the long settlements in Iceland and Greenland, the memory of the place settled deeply into the stories told back home. around hearths flickering with warm firelight. Travelers describe Vinland with soft wonder. Its mild weather, its abundant woods, its gentle shores. These stories carried no urgency, no bold claims of conquest, but rather quiet admiration for a land that felt like a far-off dream. Exploration for the Vikings was not a frantic search for glory. It was an extension of their natural relationship with the world, a calm widening of boundaries, a willingness to drift beyond the familiar with respect and openness. Each new land offered lessons. Iceland taught them resilience, Greenland taught them patience, and Vinland taught them wonder. These places were not just destinations. They became soft markers of human curiosity, woven gently into the long chain of stories that shaped their identity. When explorers returned home, their voices carried the tone of someone describing a peaceful memory. They spoke of long stretches of ocean where the sky met the water in perfect harmony. They spoke of gentle winds guiding them, of the slow rocking of their ships under starlight, and of new horizons unfolding like quiet promises. And as others listened, wrapped in furs, warmed by the steady glow of the hearth, they drifted into the same calm imaginings, following the journeys in their minds as though their spirits traveled alongside the explorers themselves. In these quiet tales of exploration, the Vikings did not appear as fierce conquerors. Instead, they appeared as patient wanderers, guided by the sea, trusting the stars, and moved by the quiet beauty of the world beyond their own shores. Their voyages became stories of discovery, not just of new lands, but the soft possibilities that lay waiting wherever the earth met the horizon. The passing of time in the Viking world was not measured by clocks or hurried schedules, but by the gentle turn of the seasons. Each part of the year carried its own rhythm, its own quiet beauty, and its own traditions that anchored the people to the land and to one another. The Viking year unfolded like a soft circle, where winter rested deeply. Spring awakened with cautious hope, summer spread its long golden light, and autumn ushered in reflection and preparation. Life flowed with this natural cycle, and rituals emerged to honor each shift, not with grand spectacle, but with calm gatherings, shared meals, and simple gestures of gratitude. Winter, long and hushed, held a special place in the lives of northern people. For months, snow covered the ground in thick blankets, softening every sound. Trees stood motionless beneath the weight of ice, and fjords froze into shimmering expanses of pale blue. Night stretched endlessly, the sun lingering only briefly before retreating behind the horizon once more. Yet winter was not a season of despair. Within the longhouses, hearths glowed with warm firelight, illuminating furs, wooden beams, and the gentle faces of families huddled together. It was a time for stories, weaving, repairing tools, and sharing food preserved from the previous seasons. Amid the deep stillness of winter came Yule, one of the most cherished celebrations of the year. The festival lasted many days, blending quiet reflection with soft joy. Villagers lit candles or torches that flickered gently against the darkness, symbolizing hope and warmth in the coldest months. Tables were filled with bread, roasted meats, and mead crafted from honey gathered in warmer times. Children listened eagerly to tales told by elders, stories of gods traveling to the night sky, of spirits watching over homes, and of ancestors whose presence lingered like soft shadows near the hearth. It was not loud or hurried. It was a slow unfolding of comfort shared among families and friends, a moment to recognize the light surviving through the darkest season. Eventually, winter loosened its grip, and spring emerged quietly beneath melting snow. Small patches of earth appeared first along streams where the water ran warmest. The sun began to rise earlier, its light still pale but steady. Birds returned, their calls delicate and tentative, as though testing the air after months of silence. Shoots of green pushed through the soil, and farmers prepared their fields for planting. They moved across the land with thoughtful steps, guided by traditions passed down through countless generations. Spring rituals were gentle acknowledgments of renewal, offerings placed at the edges of fields, blessings whispered over seeds, and shared meals marking the return of life. People did not rush the season. They allowed it to unfold slowly, understanding that the earth awakened at its own pace. As days grew longer, the air carried the scent of thawed soil and new growth, filling the villages with a subtle sense of optimism. Then came summer, the season of brightness and abundance. In the northern world, summer light stretched far into the evening, sometimes never fully fading. Villagers worked under skies washed in soft gold, tending crops, fishing, and repairing homes. Children played near rivers that sparkled beneath the sun, their laughter blending with the gentle hum of insects in the warm air. Boats set out on calm waters, their shadows gliding smoothly across the surface. Midsummer marked the height of this season. People gathered outdoors, circling bonfires that crackled comfortably against the warm night. They shared songs, simple dances, and reflections on the blessings of the year so far. Herbs were picked and tied in bundles, believed to hold special strength when gathered under the long daylight. The celebration was peaceful, rooted in gratitude for the sun's generous gifts and an acknowledgement of the ancient bond between people and the natural world. There was no rush, no urgency, only the slow, contented enjoyment of warmth while it lasted. As summer waned, autumn approached with a gentler tone. The air cooled gradually, carrying hints of wood smoke and ripe fruit. Leaves shifted into shades of amber and rust, drifting from branches in slow spirals. Fields grew heavy with grain, and farmers worked steadily to bring in a harvest before frost returned. This season felt like a soft exhale, a moment to gather what the earth had given, and to prepare for winter's arrival. The harvest was marked by calm festivities. Families gathered to thresh grain, preserve fish, and store vegetables in cool cellars dug into the ground. There was comfort in these tasks, knowing that each small effort contributed to the survival and well-being of the entire village. Meals during this time were hearty but simple, shared under skies that darkened earlier each day. Stories turned once more to the coming cold, reminding listeners of the cycles that shaped their world. Throughout the year, these seasonal shifts were accompanied by rituals that strengthened the bond between the people, their gods, and the natural world. Offerings were made at stone altars or near large trees believed to hold ancient wisdom. Small carvings or woven items were left near streams, thanking the spirits of water for their steady presence. None of these acts were grand or dramatic. They were quiet acknowledgments of forces greater than themselves, expressed through gestures as soft as a whispered prayer or a handful of grain scattered gently into the wind. In every season, the people of the North found comfort in routine. Spring planting, summer fishing, autumn storing, winter storytelling. Each stage of the year brought tasks that were familiar, grounding, and shared. These responsibilities did not weigh heavily, for they were woven into the simple flow of life. Even on the busiest days, there remained room for moments of stillness, watching the sun dip behind mountains, listening to waves lapping against the shore, or standing under a sky filled with drifting clouds or shimmering lights. By moving with the year rather than against it, the Viking people found harmony between themselves and their surroundings. They accepted the cold with the same patience they welcomed the warmth, knowing both were part of a larger pattern. Their festivals and rituals served as gentle reminders that life was cyclical, ever-changing yet always familiar. And through this quiet rhythm, the northern world sustained them, season after season, year after year, like the steady heartbeat of a land that whispered its ancient wisdom into the ears of all who listened. Among the many stories whispered around Viking hearths, none carried quite the same gentle weight as the tales of legendary heroes. These figures, shaped by time, memory, and imagination, did not stride through their stories with thunderous power or fierce declarations. Instead, they lived in the quiet corners of the sagas, moving through forests at dawn, sitting beside calm rivers in moments of reflection, and traveling across distant lands guided by quiet determination rather than noise or glory. Their legends were not told to stir the heart into excitement, but to soothe it with a slow unfolding of courage, destiny, and human longing. Sigurd, perhaps one of the most cherished heroes, was often spoken of not as a conqueror, but as a young man guided by quiet curiosity. Though later tales place a dragon before him, villagers imagined Sigurd first as a thoughtful boy sitting beside a river, watching the water slip around smooth stones, listening to its soft murmuring. He was seen as someone who learned from silence as much as from action, someone who took time to understand the world before he faced it. Even the forging of his sword was imagined as a gentle choreography, sparks floating upward from the anvil, the slow rise and fall of a hammer, the heat of the forge glowing like dawn behind the iron's form. When people spoke of him, they emphasized not his battles, but his patience, his clarity, and the steady courage that grew quietly within him. Brynhild, too, lived in the imagination as more than a warrior maiden. Listeners pictured her seated atop a high mountain, the air around her crisp and still, her thoughts flowing like the shifting clouds above. She was strong, yes, but her strength came with a calm certainty, as if she understood the threads of fate woven beneath every event. When stories described her sleeping behind a wall of fire, they did so not with drama, but with a sense of serene magic, a barrier that flickered softly in the wind, glowing like a protective blanket of warm light. Her presence in the sagas was a reminder of the quiet power found in wisdom and in the ability to remain steady even as the world changed around her. Ragnar, another figure woven deeply into Norse storytelling, was remembered as someone who traveled not out of recklessness, but out of a gentle desire to know the world. His journeys were imagined in the calm moments between waves, when the sea stretched flat and silver beneath a soft sky. He walked through forests where the leaves rustled like distant whispers, and he camped beside rivers that reflected starlight in trembling ripples. Though his name echoed across many lands, the version of Ragnar shared around peaceful hearts emphasized a sense of wonder rather than his feats, how he gazed at distant horizons with quiet curiosity, how he listened to stories of strangers with patience and respect, how he found meaning in the stillness between adventures. Other heroes drifted softly into the tales told on long winter nights. Thorstein, remembered for his calm wisdom, Hervir, who walked between worlds with steady heart, and Egil, whose poetry carried a melancholy beauty that resonated deeply in the quiet evenings of the North. These figures did not storm through their stories. They wandered through them gently, their footsteps echoing softly against the earth, their voices murmuring like wind passing through the pines. Often, the heroes' journeys mirrored the lives of the people who told the stories. Though the tales held supernatural elements, enchanted swords, prophetic dreams, and mysterious creatures, they were grounded in familiar emotions. A hero setting out on a long path felt not unlike a fisherman preparing for a distant voyage, or a family moving to new land in search of better harvests. These parallels gave the legends a comforting warmth, reminding listeners that courage did not always mean loud acts of strength. Sometimes, it meant simply waking each day and facing the tasks ahead with quiet resolve. Around the hearth, storytellers spoke slowly, letting each image unfold like the soft unfurling of a leaf in spring. Children listened with heavy eyes as the fire's glow painted warm patterns across the walls. Adults leaned back against wooden beams, their thoughts drifting between the present and the distant world of the tales. In this drowsy hush, the heroes felt close, almost like familiar friends whose lives carried truths whispered gently through time. One of the calming qualities of these stories was the sense that the heroes were guided by something larger than themselves, not by dramatic destiny, but by soft threads of fate woven into the fabric of their days. These threads pulled them toward certain places, certain choices, certain moments of stillness that shaped their paths. Listeners found comfort in this idea, the notion that their own lives, too, might be touched by quiet guidance, by unseen currents leading them gently through moments of uncertainty. Even the challenges faced by the heroes were softened in the retelling. A monster encountered in the deep woods became a symbol of fear overcome through calm perseverance. A long journey across frozen land became a meditation on endurance and the quiet strength found in simply continuing forward. The sagas transformed hardship into something manageable, something familiar, something softened by the gentle glow of the fireside and the slow cadence of a storyteller's voice. In many of these tales, the heroes found themselves pausing, sitting atop hills, gazing across fjords, or resting beneath starlit skies. These quiet moments were as meaningful as any action they took. They reflected the rhythm of real northern life, where people often paused to observe the sky, the sea, the land, or the shifting patterns of light across snow. In this way, the legends reminded listeners that reflection was not weakness, but a source of wisdom. As night deepened and the flames flickered lower, the stories often drifted toward gentle closings. Heroes returned home, not triumphant or celebrated, but simply grateful for warmth, familiar faces, and the soft embrace of rest. They sat with loved ones, shared simple meals, and allowed themselves a piece of being still. These endings soothed the listeners, wrapping them in a comforting reminder that every journey, no matter how long, eventually leads back to safety and quiet. Even now, imagining these heroes in the soft glow of memory, one can hear the echo of their calm footsteps across ancient landscapes. Their presence lingers like a distant melody, steady, familiar, and reassuring. They remind us that legends need not roar to be powerful. Sometimes, the most enduring stories are those that move gently, settle softly, and offer not excitement, but peace. Long before ink touched parchment, and long before stories found homes in written manuscripts, the sagas lived in the gentle cadence of spoken words. They traveled from hearth to hearth, carried in the steady voices of storytellers who understood that tales were not simply entertainment. They were threads binding the past to the present. The sagas unfolded slowly, like mist curling across a quiet fjord at dawn. They were recited during long winter nights, shared in moments of rest, and remembered with a closeness that made the distant past feel warm and familiar. In the dim glow of the fire, every person listening felt as though they were sitting beside the ancestors themselves, hearing the world described through ancient eyes. The sagas were not hurried. They moved at the pace of a thoughtful breath, pausing when needed, flowing when a moment called for it. Each storyteller carried their own rhythm, shaped by years of listening, observing, and absorbing the subtleties hidden within each tale. They did not merely recite events. They guided listeners through landscapes of memory, emotion, and quiet reflection. These stories did not demand attention. They gently invited it, like a soft hand resting on one's shoulder. When people spoke of the sagas, they imagined vast journeys, deep forests, icy seas, and long roads winding through lands touched by gods and mortals alike. But the heart of the sagas rested not in their dramatic moments. Rather, it lived in the quiet details. The sound of footsteps crunching over snow, the slow rising of smoke from a lonely campfire, the steady gaze between two companions sharing an unspoken understanding. These small details grounded the stories, reminding listeners that even the greatest figures of legend once breathed the same air, felt the same cold, and found comfort in the same warmth. In the evenings, when the longhouse settled into its gentle hush, a storyteller would take their place near the hearth. Flames flickered against the walls, casting warm halos of light that danced across furs and wooden beams. The storyteller's voice would begin in a calm, low tone, never rushed, never strained. Children sat closest, leaning against each other with heavy eyelids, while adults listened with the familiarity of people hearing old friends spoken of again. The sagas belonged to everyone, but they revealed themselves slowly, offering new meanings each time they were told. Often, the stories began with simple images: a quiet farmstead at the edge of a valley, a lone traveler walking beneath a gray sky, a boat drifting across gentle waters. These scenes unfolded like dreams, their edges softened by memory. The everyday details of life were blended with glimpses of fate, magic, or ancient wisdom, creating tales that felt both real and otherworldly. Listeners were guided gently between the two realms, never startled by the shift, because in the sagas, the extraordinary grew naturally from the ordinary. One saga might speak of family living on a rugged coastline, where the sea's steady rhythm shaped their days. The tale would drift through generations, describing births and quiet ceremonies, meals shared around modest tables, storms weathered with patience, and quiet joys felt in the small successes of daily life. Through it all, the narrator would introduce moments of destiny, signs interpreted through dreams, symbols appearing in the sky, or encounters with travelers whose presence guided the family's path. Each moment carried the soft glow of meaning, like a lantern illuminating a dark room. Another saga would follow a wanderer who left home seeking something he could not name. Perhaps wisdom, perhaps peace, perhaps the gentle pull of fate urging him forward. His journey might lead him through forests where the wind whispered through tall pines, across mountains dusted with snow like powdered starlight, and into villages where he was welcomed with warm food and curious eyes. Along the way, he would hear stories from strangers, stories within stories, that shaped his understanding of the world. These nested tales added layers to the saga, deepening its quiet resonance. The sagas did not always contain heroes in the traditional sense. Some characters were humble farmers, thoughtful women tending their homes, blacksmiths working patiently at their forges, or children watching the seasons change with wide-eyed wonder. Their stories mattered because they reflected the experiences of those listening. Every villager could find a trace of themselves somewhere in the sagas, a familiar emotion, a familiar fear, a familiar hope. This quiet connection made the stories feel alive, as though they breathed with the people who carried them. Even when sagas turned toward conflict, the tone remained gentle in retelling. Battles were described not with fiery excitement, but with a soft awareness of their inevitability and their cost. The emphasis rested not on the clash of weapons, but on the thoughts that filled the hearts of those involved. The longing for a home, the desire for peace, the acceptance of fate. Listeners felt these moments deeply, for they understood that strength was not always loud. Sometimes, it was a quiet endurance that followed hardship. There were also sagas shaped by love that grew slowly, like moss spreading across stone, love grounded in companionship, shared work, and gentle words spoken at the end of a long day. These tender stories offered warmth to listeners, reminding them of the simple beauty found in connection. They showed that love could be a guiding star in the darkest of winters, its glow steady and comforting. Dreams played an important role in many sagas. Characters often saw glimpses of the future in their sleep. Visions wrapped in symbols, carried by soft voices, or framed by strange and peaceful landscapes. These dreams did not reveal answers directly. Instead, they offered gentle guidance, leaving space for intuition and choice. Listeners appreciated the dreamlike quality of these moments, for they mirrored the quiet mystery of their own dreams, images that lingered in the mind long after waking. The land itself became a silent character in the sagas. Mountains stood like ancient guardians, rivers carried memories in their flowing currents, and forests whispered the stories of those who wandered beneath their branches. The bond between people and the natural world was woven deeply into every tale, reflecting the truth that the land shaped their lives just as their lives shaped the stories they shared. The sagas offer a reminder that nature held wisdom, patience, and a quiet power that deserved reverence. As the storyteller reached the end of a tale, their voice often softened even further, like embers dimming at the edge of the hearth. The endings were rarely abrupt. They drifted into quiet reflections about the passing of time, the changes every generation brings, and the gentle ways in which the past continues to shape the present. Listeners often sat in silence afterward, letting the echoes of the saga settle within them, like snow settling softly over a still forest. Once the final words were spoken, the longhouse grew even more peaceful. The flames flickered low, casting a warm glow over relaxed faces and sleepy eyes. In the quiet spaces between legend and memory lived the figures who shaped fate itself. Beings neither fully divine nor entirely distant, but woven gently into the fabric of the world. Their presence was soft, like threads glimmering faintly within a tapestry, or like distant stars whose light touched the earth without sound. Valkyries and Norns, though often spoken of in stories with awe, were imagined by peaceful minds not as fearsome or mysterious beings, but as quiet guardians who moved through the realms with calm purpose. They were part of the unseen rhythm guiding all lives, their influence subtle as drifting snow or the hush of midnight wind. The Valkyries were often pictured riding through the sky, but those in the northern villages imagined their journeys differently. They saw them as graceful figures traveling silently above misty fields or gliding across moonlit waters. Their cloaks shimmered faintly, reflecting starlight like ripples on a calm fjord. Their hair flowed behind them, catching the gentle breeze of night, and their eyes held serene clarity that seemed to see far beyond the present moment. They were not warriors in a loud sense. They were calm choosers of fate, moving softly between worlds to guide spirits with care. When they appeared in stories, they did so quietly. A traveler resting near a stream might see the faint silhouette of one reflected in the water, her form blending so naturally with the night that she could have been a dream. A shepherd watching over grazing sheep might notice a gentle glimmer above the mountains, unsure if it was a star or something more. The Valkyries never demanded attention. Their presence was felt more through atmosphere than action. A sudden calm, a strange sense of understanding, or the soft knowledge that a path had shifted, even if only slightly. Their role, though tied to warriors in later tales, held a deeper symbolism in the peaceful retellings. They represented guidance, transition, and the quiet honor of living truthfully. Villagers imagined them as figures who understood the weight of every choice, who valued not strength in battle, but the strength found in kindness, courage, and endurance. When someone passed from this life, the Valkyries were imagined not as stern escorts, but as comforting guides who wrapped the soul in gentle assurance and carried it toward its next destination, like a bird carried by a soft wind. Their presence eased the fear of the unknown, offering a reminder that even endings contain a kind of peace. Yet even more ancient than the Valkyries were the Norns, the weavers of fate who sat at the roots of Yggdrasil, shaping the lives of gods and mortals alike. People picture them as calm, thoughtful beings whose hands move with a measured rhythm, weaving threads that stretched across all realms. Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, past, present, and future, work together in silence, their weaving flowing as smoothly as a river carving its path through stone. Each thread represented a life, each not a turning point, each shift and pattern a choice made or a path discovered. The Norns did not force their will. Their weaving was not rigid or absolute. It was a gentle structure that allowed room for movement, for growth, for unexpected turns shaped by free will. They understood that life was not a straight line, but a soft spiral of experiences, emotions, and moments that guided individuals toward their own understanding. As they worked, they listened to the murmurs of the tree's roots, which pulsed softly with the memories of the world. They touched the water in the well of Urd, watching reflections form and dissolve like fleeting visions. Stories described their movements with quiet detail. The slow draw of a thread between fingers, the tap of a spindle against wood, the way the fibers glowed faintly in the light reflecting off the well surface. Listeners imagined the Norns working not with urgency, but with timeless patience, each gesture deliberate and filled with deep care. Their weaving shaped destinies, but it did so gently, ensuring that each life flowed according to its nature, like streams merging into rivers before meeting the calm openness of the sea. Sometimes, when people sat alone at the edge of a field at dusk, watching the sky shift through shades of rose and violet, they imagined that the Norns' threads glimmered faintly above the horizon. A sudden memory, a quiet realization, or a feeling of subtle direction was believed to come from these three ancient weavers, soft nudges from a place beyond the ordinary world. Even the simple act of waking up with a new sense of clarity was attributed, in part, to their patient touch. The stories of Valkyries and Norns helped villagers understand the mysteries of fate and choice without fear. The world was vast, unpredictable, and full of moments beyond human understanding. Yet through these gentle figures, the unknown became a companion rather than a threat. People found comfort in the idea that their lives were part of a larger pattern, something beautiful and intricate, woven with intention, even when its meaning was not immediately clear. During long winter nights, when snow drifted softly against wooden walls and the fire crackled on the hearth, storytellers spoke of how the Norns and Valkyries worked in harmony. The Valkyries guided souls along the paths the Norns had woven, ensuring no journey was taken alone. The Norns shaped the threads with quiet care, and the Valkyries carried those threads onward into the flow of the realms. Together, they maintained a balance that extended through every life, every season, and every breath of the northern world. Listeners heard these tales with peaceful acceptance. They did not need to understand every detail. It was enough to know that there were forces beyond sight gently shaping their paths. Forces as soft and constant as wind brushing through pine trees, or as steady as tide water washing against the shore. The presence of these beings brought a sense of calm to daily life, an understanding that fate was not a harsh decree, but gentle guide, moving quietly alongside each person from birth to their final moment. As the night deepened and the storyteller's voice softened, the images of Valkyries and Norns drifted to the minds of those gathered, glimmers of feathered cloaks, the sound of threads sliding across wooden frames, the glow of moonlight on woven patterns. These figures lingered like the fading warmth of embers, settling into dreams, offering comfort in the knowledge that every life, no matter how small it seemed, was part of a vast, gentle tapestry woven with patience, purpose, and deep, enduring peace. In the quiet corners of the northern world, where twilight lingers long after the sun has dipped below the horizon, people often spoke of mysterious forces that drifted gently between the seen and the unseen. These forces were not loud or fearsome. They moved softly, like low fog settling over a field or like starlight glimmering faintly on snow. Magic, in the Norse imagination, was woven into daily life through subtle signs, whispered rituals, and the careful carving of runes whose meanings echoed with ancient power. It was not something to be wielded recklessly, but something to approach with reverence, patience, and a quiet heart. Runes were at the center of this mystical understanding. Each one carried a shape both simple and profound. Straight lines carved into wood, stone, or bone. These lines seem plain at first glance, but villagers believed that beneath their simple appearance lay layers of meaning shaped by gods, fate in the natural world. To carve a rune was to touch a fragment of something older than memory itself, something rooted in the very structure of the universe. The act of carving runes was slow, almost meditative. A man or woman would sit near a hearth or beneath the shade of a tree, holding a small piece of wood or a smooth stone in their hand. The knife moved gently, scraping thin curls from the surface. With each careful stroke, the rune took shape. It was not only the carving that mattered, but the intention behind it, the quiet thoughts, the steady breath, the understanding that each line carried significance. When the carving was finished, the rune felt alive in a subtle way, as though it held a faint pulse of meaning that one could sense by simply resting a thumb against it. Different runes carried different whispers of power. Some were carved to bring protection, their shapes echoing the strength of mountains or the firmness of oak roots gripping the earth. Others spoke of clarity, guiding those who sought understanding or needed steady direction through uncertain times. A few runes represented joy, harvest, or new beginnings, symbols of the natural cycles that shaped every life. But none of these meanings were loud or forceful. They worked like the slow turning of seasons, gentle influences that guided rather than commanded. Seer, a form of Norse magic associated with foresight and subtle influence, was practiced by those who understood how to listen to the world's quietest voices. Practitioners did not call upon thunder or flame. Instead, they opened themselves to the delicate threads of fate woven beneath the surface of daily life. In peaceful retellings, seer was imagined as a serene practice, a person sitting alone at dusk, wrapped in a cloak, their eyes half closed as they listened to the murmur of the wind or the soft cracking of burning logs. Their mind drifted gently, following impressions, visions, and feelings carried from places beyond ordinary sight. These visions were not startling or overwhelming. They appeared like gentle ripples on a calm lake, images, colors, or emotions that hinted at possibilities rather than dictating destinies. Those who practiced seer interpreted these signs with care, understanding that fate was subtle and that the world rarely spoke in direct answers. They offered guidance to their communities not as commands, but as quiet suggestions shaped by deep intuition. Listeners took these words to heart the way one listens to the changing weather, with respect, awareness, and a willingness to adapt. Magic in the Norse world was also deeply connected to the land. Certain groves of trees were believed to hold ancient energies, especially those that had stood for centuries, their roots intertwined with the memories of countless seasons. Streams with unusually clear water were thought to reflect truths unseen, their surfaces shimmering not only with light, but with meaning. Stones scattered across hillsides carried a stillness that seemed to hold stories within them, as though the earth itself remembered everything that had passed. These natural places were visited not for dramatic rituals, but for quiet reflection, moments spent listening, observing, and feeling the subtle pulse of the world. Women played an especially significant role in the quiet magic of daily life. They wove protective symbols into clothing, not as superstition, but as gentle acts of care. They whispered blessings over newborns, sang lullabies believed to carry ancient wisdom, and prepared herbs that soothed both the body and the spirit. Their knowledge was passed from mother to daughter, shaped by seasons, by observation, and by the soft guidance of intuition. To them, magic was not something separate from life. It was woven into their hands, their words, their movements. Men, too, carried their own understanding of the mystical. They carved runes into the handles of tools, etched small symbols into the beams of longhouses, or carried talismans during long journeys across the sea. These objects were reminders that they were not alone, that unseen forces traveled with them, offering protection and quiet courage. When they sat by campfires during long explorations, the runes hanging from their necks or tucked into their belts glowed faintly in the firelight, their carved lines catching sparks like tiny constellations. Magic also shaped the dreams of the people. Dreams were believed to be doorways through which guidance slipped gently from the other realms into the hearts of sleepers. Someone might awaken with a sense of certainty, as though a question had been answered or a path illuminated. Others might remember only fragments, a color, a place, a voice that lingered in the mind long after morning came. These dreams were shared around the hearth in calm voices, interpreted with care, and sometimes woven into story, myth, or tradition. The boundary between the mystical and the ordinary was thin and tender. The people did not see magic as something dangerous or forbidden. Instead, they recognized it as a natural part of existence, one of the many threads woven into the tapestry of the world. Just as the sea moved with tides and the sky shifted with clouds, so too did unseen forces move quietly through every life. This understanding brought a sense of peace, a reminder that the world held mysteries but was not hostile, that even the unknown carried its own kind of gentle order. During long winter nights, when snow blanketed the land in soft silence, families gathered close to the hearth and shared stories of runes that brought protection, visions that offered guidance, and moments when the veil between worlds felt thin enough to touch. Their voices drifted in the warm air, blending with the soft crackle of the fire, as embers glowed like tiny runes carved from living light. The children listened with wonder, and the adults nodded with quiet recognition. These stories were not meant to thrill, but to soothe, to remind listeners of the soft magic that moved around them even in their sleep. And as night deepened, the sense of the mystical settled into the room like a gentle, invisible presence. It lingered in the shadows, in the flicker of the flames, in the rhythmic breathing of those drifting into dreams. It reminded them that they lived in a world where the ordinary and the extraordinary touched gently, where symbols carried power, and where fate, in all its quiet complexity, was woven with patience, intention, and the softest of threads. In the northern world, where quiet forests stretch for miles and mountains rise like ancient guardians, people lived side by side with creatures both real and imagined. These beings filled their days with wonder, and their nights with whispered stories shared by the fire. Some were animals they encountered often, ravens gliding beneath gray skies, wolves padding silently through snow-covered paths, while others belonged to a realm of myth, known only through tales and dreams. Together, they formed a gentle presence that shaped the way people understood the world, grounding them in nature while reminding them of mysteries that drifted just beyond their sight. Ravens held a special place in Norse imagination. Their dark feathers shimmered with hints of blue when touched by sunlight, and their keen eyes seemed to notice every movement, every shift in the wind. Villagers often watched them from the edges of fields or along the coastline, where they perched on driftwood or the branches of tall pines. Ravens were seen as thoughtful creatures, patient observers who understood more than they revealed. In quiet moments, when one raven circled overhead or landed near the longhouse, people imagined it carrying messages from distant lands or from the realm of the gods. Its presence felt like a soft reminder that the world was larger and more connected than one could see. Wolves, too, wandered through the northern forest. Their presence felt more often than it was seen. On winter nights, when the moon cast pale light across the snow, the distant howl of a wolf drifted through the air like a long, sorrowful song. Yet these creatures were not feared with the intensity described in later tales. They were admired for their quiet strength, their loyalty to their packs, and their ability to move gracefully through even the harshest landscapes. People respected wolves as fellow survivors of the northern world, beings attuned to its rhythms, its dangers, and its beauty. In the quiet shade of the woods, foxes darted with delicate steps, their red coats glowing softly against the muted greens and browns of the forest floor. They were quick, clever, and often seen as symbols of adaptability. Children loved stories of foxes who outwitted larger animals, slipping through narrow spaces or hiding in hollow logs. To glimpse a fox at dusk, its tail brushing against leaves as it moved, felt like witnessing a small piece of magic, something fleeting, gentle, and wonderfully alive. Beyond these familiar creatures were those found only in legends, shaped by imagination and carried forward through generations. One such being was Jormungandr, the great serpent said to encircle the world deep beneath the sea. Though the serpent's tail sounded immense and awe-inspiring, villagers often pictured it differently. Instead of a monstrous creature thrashing the depths, they imagined a great, slow-moving presence resting beneath calm ocean waters, its body rising and falling with the rhythm of the tides. Its breath, they believed, stirred gentle ripples on the surface. Its turning created the distant swell of waves that brushed quietly against the shore. Even a creature so vast felt peaceful in the soft retellings shared by the hearth. There were also tales of dragons, not the fiery beasts of later stories, but ancient, slumbering spirits of mountains and deep earth. These dragons were imagined as beings of immense age, curled within caves lined with glittering minerals, their scales reflecting faint, flickering light. They rarely moved, and when they did, it was with the slow, heavy grace of something that had seen centuries pass like seasons. People believed that these dragons understood the land far better than any human could, their bodies connected to mountains, and their dreams intertwined with the shifting of the earth itself. From the misty realm of folklore came the spirits who walked between worlds, gentle beings who drifted through forests, across meadows, or along riverbanks without disturbing a single leaf. Some were described as tall and ethereal, their forms shimmering like moonlight on water. Others appeared small and quick, like flashes of soft light darting beneath the roots of ancient trees. These beings were neither dangerous nor intrusive. They simply existed alongside the natural world, as much a part of it as the wind or the flowing streams. Horses, both real and mythical, held a special significance. Real horses were steady companions, strong, calm, and patient. They carried travelers across long distances, pulled carts laden with goods, and grazed peacefully in open fields. Their rhythmic hoofbeats created a soothing sound that echoed across the countryside, reminding everyone who heard of journeys taken and journeys yet to come. Mythical horses like Sleipnir, the eight-legged steed, were depicted as moving with impossible grace across the sky or between realms. Yet even Sleipnir, in gentle retellings, glided softly, each step a quiet ripple in the air. Sea creatures also filled the stories told in coastal villages. Whales were revered for their size and serenity. When one surfaced, sending a misty breath into the sky, it felt like the sea itself exhaling. Their deep songs, too low for most to hear, were believed to echo far beneath the waves, carrying messages across vast, unseen expanses. Seals, playful and watchful, basked on rocks near the shore or bobbed curiously beside fishing boats. Their round eyes and smooth movements made them beloved figures in tales shared with children who imagined them as guardians of hidden underwater realms. Even the simplest animals carried symbolic meaning. A deer stepping quietly through the forest represented gentleness and intuition. A bear, emerging from its den in spring, symbolized renewal and strength grounded in calm patience. Birds, small ones fluttering among branches or larger ones soaring above the treetops, were seen as messengers of changing seasons, their songs carried on the wind like delicate threads connecting earth to sky. The mythical and natural creatures of the Norse world blended seamlessly into daily life, creating a landscape where wonder and reality walked together in harmony. People treated the animals around them with respect, understanding that every creature shared the land, the weather, and the cycles of life. And when they spoke of dragons, serpents, or spirits, they did so with the same calm tone used for wolves or ravens, as though these beings were simply different expressions of the world's quiet mysteries. At night, when the longhouse grew still and the fire dimmed to glowing embers, children drifted asleep imagining these creatures wandering through forests, flying across moonlit skies, or resting in hidden places untouched by humans. The stories lingered in their dreams, soft, gentle, and filled with the comfort of knowing that the world was alive in ways both seen and unseen. And so, whether through the steady presence of real animals or the soft wonder of mythical ones, the people of the North lived surrounded by companions who helped them understand the world's beauty, depth, and quiet magic. These creatures, each in their own way, whispered ancient truths carried by the wind, by the earth, and by the waters that shaped the land they called home. The poetic Edda and prose Edda were like soft lanterns glowing the quiet halls of Norse memory, though written long after the first storyteller spoke them aloud. People imagine these works as ancient voices drifting gently through the air, shaped by centuries of calm retellings beside warm hearths. The poetic Edda was filled with verses that moved like slow water over smooth stones, simple rhythms carrying deep meaning. Its lines spoke of the world's earliest moments, when fire and frost touched in silence, and when gods walked softly through a young and fragile cosmos. Odin's sayings, tucked gently within these poems, felt like quiet reminders of how to live, to act with humility, to welcome guests kindly, to listen more than one speaks. These teachings blended so naturally with everyday life that listeners often nodded softly, as if hearing familiar truths whispered back to them. The prose Edda, more ordered and careful in its explanations, acted like a guide to the vast tapestry of Norse myth. It offered gentle clarity, who the gods were, how the realms connected, how symbols and stories intertwined. Instead of grand declarations, it felt like a steady hand leading the reader through fog, revealing shapes one by one. Together, the Eddas preserve stories of gods, giants, and distant worlds, not with force, but with patience. They were soft vessels carrying the wisdom of ages, reminding those who listened that even the most powerful tales could be told with calm voices, quiet imagery, and slow, drifting beauty. In peaceful retellings, Ragnarok was not a violent storm but quiet transformation, like winter slowly giving way to spring. People imagine its beginning as a soft dimming of the sun, a subtle cooling of the air, and a hush falling gently across the land. The wolves who chase the sun and moon finally reached their glowing companions, and the skies slipped into a serene twilight that seemed to pause time itself. Yggdrasil, the great tree, trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of change. Its leaves drifted downward like soft feathers, signaling the end of one age. Giants stirred calmly in their distant realm, not in anger but in acceptance. Even the great serpent beneath the sea moved with slow purpose, responding to the world's quiet call. The gods felt this change with patience. Odin gazed across the fading world with calm understanding. Thor held his hammer with steady courage, knowing his strength had always been a comfort. Freya and Frigg watched gently, aware that endings carried the seeds of future beginnings. When the world finally grew still, everything rested in deep silence, soft, complete, peaceful. And from that silence, new land rose. Green shoots appeared. Rivers carved fresh paths. Sunlight, warm and renewed, returned to the sky. In the retelling shared beside the hearth, Ragnarok was a reminder that life moves in circles, not abrupt endings. It offered comfort instead of fear, the understanding that every fading light is followed by a new dawn, gentle and full of possibility. As the journey through Viking stories reaches its end, night settles softly over the northern world. The longhouse grows still. Shadows deepen. The last embers glow quietly, warming the wooden walls with fading orange light. Everything slows, as if the world itself exhales in calm contentment. Outside, the sky stretches wide and silent. Stars shimmer faintly above snowy fields and dark forests. The wind moves gently through the pines, carrying the cool scent of night. It feels as though all of nature has paused to rest. Seas, mountains, trees, and distant horizons breathing together in quiet harmony. Inside, your thoughts begin to settle just as gently. The stories of gods, heroes, creatures, and ancient worlds drift to the edges of your mind like soft mist. They no longer demand attention. They simply hover, warm and comforting, ready to accompany you into sleep. This is the peaceful space where the old world of the North feels closest. Its calm rhythms, its quiet wisdom, and its soothing textures blend into your breathing. Every inhale draws in rest. Every exhale releases the weight of the day. The northern lights, imagined or real, shimmer softly across the night sky, slow, graceful, and endlessly calming. Their glow reminds you that beauty often arrives quietly, without hurry or noise. Now, the long journey through these legends gently fades, like snow settling on a still morning. The stories that carried you through forests, across seas, and into ancient realms now guide you toward sleep. Let them dim. Let your breath slow. Let your body sink into rest. The night holds you softly. The stories cradle you gently. And with this final quiet moment, the journey ends and your dreams begin.